Computer can't manipulate us. It's how are you manipulating the tool so that it produces what you want out of it.
Welcome to Connected Conversations. I am Elena Petrova, founder and CEO of ISTE Inc. Tune in as we share inspiring stories, connect with local heroes, and discover solutions that uplift us. Welcome to Connected Conversations. And today we have Bryan Chicas.
Yes.
Today's conversation is about technology as infrastructure for communication. So many conversations about what technology can do, what AI can do, what AI cannot do. And there are a lot of negative conversations today that technology is ruining us. What's going to happen tomorrow? We are going to lose jobs. What I want to do today with you, Bryan, is I want to talk about positive, because technology can build infrastructure to pivot communication in school, in education, and you have plenty of examples that you shared with me.
Yeah.
So technology as an infrastructure, what is it?
So technology as an infrastructure, I think that with time we've had this big idea that technology is this advancement that is way too advanced for what our knowledge is, and I think that we face this resistance when it comes down to technology, where people feel like it comes from fear. Where people feel like they are afraid of change. We faced that in the classroom 25 years ago when technology was integrated by implementing computers in the classroom. And what we were able to learn through that is that it facilitates learning. It's literally a tool to learn. And as when you were talking about the infrastructure of technology, I take it as this realm that you get to do and decide what you want out of it. It's not what it's going to teach you, it's how you're going to use it to teach to others, and adequately using it correctly.
And when my team introduced me to your profile, I was reading about your organization, I was looking at your website. I had this picture, this image of a teacher in a remote area in front of the laptop, logging in one of your webinars and getting the information on a global level, being seen, being heard, being included in the global conversation about education, probably contributing to this global community dialogue on what needs to get done, maybe getting the information from other communities around the globe, something that we didn't have before. Then I also saw that in addition to technology, you are arranging events. You are arranging events online. More importantly, you are arranging events in person. And this is community building. Also, in my past life, I used to be a teacher, and I know how difficult it is. For teachers are not making a lot of money.
Yeah.
And sometimes participating in person event, participating online event, it makes difference, right? You are seen, you are heard, you get the information that is needed. So tell me, what problem you are solving? How did you come up with the idea to build this global community?
Yeah, I think that's one of the greatest things that we've done in the field and what we do for work, being able to allow access and inclusion for different types of learners, especially educators that come from all over the world. Like you were saying, someone that's logging in through a laptop that doesn't have the resources to go ahead and travel, to an area where there's other people that, teach what they do, or are, someone that utilizes a laptop to gain access that they may not have in person. The thing with ISTE that I appreciate so much is we offer webinars. Those webinars, we offer free webinars with leaders that have topics that, people want to know about. Like, I think that's one thing that I appreciate so much about ISTE is we listen to the needs of the educators, because that's exactly who we're trying to go ahead and cater to, you know? And we design our webinars, we design our certifications, we design our courses, we design our events, we also have like a conference every year where we all gather, and I had the pleasure of going to it last year, and when I tell you, I was blown away at the reach that we have, where we have people from all over the world that come to this event, and are literally breathing everything that ISTE is all about, which is incorporating technology in the education field, whether that is through leadership opportunities, whether that's in the classroom as a teacher, or whether that's a vocational student looking to become a teacher, learning how to do it correctly. I have the pleasure in my like role as a program engagement specialist of working with the certified educator community around the world. We have over 2,500 certified educators, that go through a certification in over 100 countries. And what we do is we offer educator meetups. And what that is, it's, we host them throughout every single month. We have at least one, two, sometimes more than that, where they can come over and then bring a topic to discuss during that meetup, and you can find someone from Asia to the United States, and the way that we access is so different across the world, here in America, we're so fortunate to be able to have technology as kind of like a tool that it's already given to us to teach, like that one-to-one device. Other countries around the world don't have that. Some teachers don't even have that, So going through a certification myself as I came on board, I was in a cohort with someone that was in another world. I don't know if I can say like the country, but he was like in China, and he was like, my students are, censored to a lot of information that I specifically have to monitor by showing one computer in front of the screen. But I was like, that's technology. Like, that's equity in the classroom, because you are, instead of like trying to hide something from them, you are using that tool to model to kids how to use technology in their like life, and it's one of those things where like we cater to all kinds of needs, all kinds of backgrounds, all kinds of access to technology, and that is one thing that like one of the greatest takeaways I've had since I've been in at ISTE.
So tell us more about this organization. You mentioned certification. What is this certification? Um, what this certification sort of in house people to achieve?
Okay, so ISTE, focuses on ISTE+ASCD focuses on the integration of technology, in the classroom. Like the ISTE standards came into fruition in 1997 when there was like this high need and interest for what's the proper use of technology, because during that time, like, the computer was like this big, the millennial was this big like idea that people were like afraid about. How do you like function in a digital world, and what happened in that time is they came up with the ISTE standards of how to meaningfully, purposely, intentionally integrate technology into the classroom. And with that, in 2007 they started coming up with the certification process, which is designed for teachers. That was like kind of like the baby. I like my boss was the one that helped a lot of that creation with some other leadership. And what it does is it's designed for teachers to teach them how to integrate technology in an intentional, purposeful, and meaningful way for students, And I feel like I was able to understand exactly what the certification was after teaching through COVID, because it's literally on the use of technology in your practice. It focuses more on the pedagogy and not on the tool. It's not how well you use the laptop. It's how are you using the laptop as a form of, I like to say, as a channel to learn. It's how are you using, like PowerPoint? How are you using the projector? How are you using a camera? How are you using a visual, to show the concept that you're really trying to teach? Because you can give everyone access to a computer, but how are they using that access
Mm-hmm.
to learn? You know? And that was one of those things where the certification comes into play, where we focus on, are you using it intentionally? Are you using it just to offer it? And I think that that's where like this big disconnect has happened in the last couple of years, where like technology is everywhere. Every
Right.
student has access to a phone, you know, but are they using it to learn intentionally, or are they using it as a method of entertainment or a method just because it's there, you know? And with certification, it's one of those things where we bring in teachers from all over the world who are interested in getting to know how to integrate technology purposely in their work, you know? And our certifications are designed, it started as a teacher certification, which was designed for teachers and how they design lesson plans and lesson activities that show their mastery of the use of technology in their classroom, And then as we grew, we started seeing a lot of interest from leaders that were wanting to go ahead and have that as well. But their role, was different than what the intent of the certification for educators was for. Where the the educator certification is focused on teachers with learners that are adults or children. Leaders don't necessarily have that. So they came up with the instructional leader certification that's designed for district leaders, administrators, coaches, and it aligns with the competencies of an instructional leader, and what that does, it, you know, designs your certification or your learning journey specific to your role, and that's had a great success with people from all over the world that are decision makers in the education field, and that's been really great. And recently, just now, we decided, like, we saw this big need of how are students demonstrating their knowledge of the ISTE standards in their work, and we just released the EdTech teacher certification that's designed and specifically made for teachers, and these can be like, pre-vocational teachers that are going through educational programs that are looking to see how to design lesson plans where the students are showing the work um, that aligns to the ISTE standards and the proper use and intentional use of technology in their work.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
You mentioned pandemic,
Yeah.
and I am sure that there is a lot of shift happening there. Can you give us a couple of examples how your organization probably helped multiple teachers in school and organizations to power through that
Yeah.
challenging times?
I can tell you, being a teacher during the pandemic was so hard. Like, we've never gone through anything similar like that before. It it changed the education, like, world as we knew it, because we're used to, you know a classroom being the environment to learn,
Mm-hmm.
between four walls, essentially, and then it sent us into this completely new realm, a new world, where you could literally learn from anywhere in the world, you know no one was prepared how to go ahead and do so. No one knew
Mm-hmm.
how to use things, what to use, what's the proper way to use it, teach it. Intentionality was lacking in a way because we weren't prepared for it. And I think that ISTE was a beacon of that, of those answers that a lot of those teachers needed at that time. Um, it's just one of those things where, like, me, like, learning what we do and going through to be able to go ahead and sit through what the learners are doing. Like, in order for me to go ahead and tell someone, I believe in this product, let me go through it so that I can learn as well what you're going to do. So I have a proper understanding of what you need to go ahead and do. And through that certification, I was able to be validated of the work that I did in the pandemic, which is, how am I using my laptop to communicate to students? How am I inferencing, like, data, how are kids engaged in my classroom? Like, are kids actually learning? It was a huge challenge because, I come from this generation that I think, of teachers who were raised with computers. And in the pandemic, because there's this assumption that we were raised with computers, we knew everything about computers. And that's not always the case, you know? And I think that because I'm part of that generation of teachers that were expected to know everything about computers and how to teach, we were going to be the ones that like transition so quickly into the virtual world. I did have some advantages, but I didn't know everything, you know? And it forced us to collaborate with one another. And that is one thing that I, working with ISTE now, I realize and understand so well that they foster community, you know? And community in a virtual world was something that during the pandemic, not a lot of us knew how to
I
do.
think none of us
No
knew.
one knew.
That was a new
Yeah,
concept.
and like, you know, ISTE community is one of those big founding like themes that's incorporated in everything that we do, with our certifications building community in a virtual world, with our courses being able to cater to the needs of the learning community and the needs of the of people and things that they want to go ahead and like learn about and stuff, you know, like that's one of those things. And you know, with the pandemic happening, I think that it shifted the need for people to say or honestly understand that you'll never know enough because
Mhm.
you can always learn more. And technology isn't going away. It's, you know, only adapting and changing. And it forced us to think, how fast are we adapting to the change, instead of like, you know, letting technology just take away and we're just playing catch up, you know.
But I hear you saying is, in addition to the last point, that technology is also great, but it's not going anywhere by its, well, it might. Who knows what's going to happen tomorrow? There are some scary conversations going on there. But in for the moment, what you and I are discussing, the fact that technology in combination with the human, let's say human-centric technology, in combination with the concept of community, that's what takes us to this incredibly positive change that we can achieve. And then again, the companies that build technology build the community around it with in-person interactions and learning and certification. To me, this is something that really going to drive us in the future, because just technology companies, there are so many of them right
Yeah.
now, and it's just too many, and I think that we are losing interest towards them now. After pandemic, I think we are hungry for this human connection, and we are hungry to go and meet each other and reconnect. So if you producing technology with, again, learning, because people will always want to learn, plus human interaction, plus thus in-person events and conferences where you can connect online, plus connect in person, plus building community. So that's what you guys are doing.
Yeah. You know, one thing that I've learned since I've been at ISTE is that um, like learners will know, like not always come to you. Sometimes you also have to look for the learners, you know, and I think that's a skill that you need to go ahead and carry with.
Can you elaborate on
Yeah.
that? That is an
Yeah,
interesting.
like I think it's a personal standpoint too. Like
Mhm.
your people will not always come to you. Sometimes you have to look for your people. Same thing with learning, you know? Not everyone learns the same way too. Um, when it comes down to like your learners and looking for your learners, you have to meet them where they're at. Some people learn better independently. Some people learn better with guidance. Some people learn better in person, you know? So how are you offering that in your products and services? And at ISTE+ASCD, it's something that we really focus with our courses that are independent, you know, 5 hour, 2 hour, 15-hour courses that are very designed into very different types of learning. So people that are busy, and want on the go learning that they can go ahead and pause and come back to it later. We offer those CLS, like customized learning experiences, where like you might have an in-person need where you want us to come on over and do a professional development course or activity in person because that's how your learners need. Or we offer virtual events like webinars, like we were saying earlier. There's someone that wants to get a topic and jump in from wherever in the world. Or we also have the events like conference where people want to come and gather. I was just doing something, talking about this with my organization and a group of members, where I was talking to them how to market to different generations. you
Oh,
know how to market to different generations, like Gen Z, millennials, and Gen X learn differently. And that's our current field of educators. How are we adapting our products and our services to them? Because we have, but like, Gen Z is the future of tomorrow. And if we don't adapt to the way that they learn, we're only going to disservice our field, because they're going to age and they're going to be our future educators. So we need to go ahead and have a proper understanding of how they learn, how they engage, how they, what interests them. Because if we don't know how to go ahead and get them, find them, we're going to go ahead and lose that entire population of learners that we want to go ahead and make sure that they're using our services. As a business standpoint, that is exactly the kind of things that you're looking for the people that you want to kind of like bring in, but also, like when I was saying earlier, like learning and understanding how different generations learn. Don't forget about the other generations that are still actively present. One thing in our education field that I've noticed the last couple of years, especially in the United States, there's a lot of career switchers, people that are looking for something new. After they've been in one field 10 years, they want to try something new. They're still entering the field. So you have to understand how they learn, how they process, to be able to design experiences that feel authentic to them. You know, um, I think in this current world of social media, I've noticed within the last like year, authenticity is key.
absolutely.
People want to go ahead and,
Personalization,
yep,
authenticity,
authenticity is
yes.
key. People want to know what you stand for, what you're about. They want to know exactly what is it that you're trying to say. And that is one thing that I've told my team as I come in, being able to say, like, people want to know that we believe in our products, because if we believe in our products, they're going to be interested in what we're like, offering to them, because people want to know that you care about the work. Because when you care about the work, people want to know about the work. And that is one thing that I've like, you know really understood, after working with like ISTE and ASD, the aspect of community, that big piece that we try to do with our work, building and instilling community. Access is allowing people to come in through the door. Inclusivity is what's keeping them in, So you can go ahead and welcome everyone in and tell them how you're going to use technology. But then once that training wheel comes off, the inclusion piece comes into play when, um, how are they taking away the knowledge and the content that you taught, and instilling it in their roles and in their daily routines as an educator, teacher, instructional leader, or decision maker in the world.
So, what is inclusion for you guys? Because I'm pretty sure you probably have a lot of challenges. Your community is global, you had 100 something countries.
Yeah. So, for example, our certification, which is what I like work with, the credentials, um, we have over 2,500 certified educators that have gone through a certification. They come to us because they understand that our certification, aligned with the SD, like SE standards, has, a reputable recognized, like, reputable recognition around the world of how to properly integrate technology in their practice. People come to us, schools come to us, leaders come to us. And it's crazy when I tell you I went to conference and people from all over the world, and you're like, how, would you imagine the reach being there? And it's because, when I was saying earlier, you have to look for your learner, because the learner sometimes will no longer come to you. We've done this, process of translating our certification for countries and languages that like might need that. There's this need for it. Um, we offer like our certification, we've like our educator certification, we started offering in Spanish, because we saw this big need for that. I, being um, a English language learner in the United States growing up, see the
Mm-hmm.
huge need for that as an adult now, because um, what I was saying, like going back into that idea that you need to look for your learner. Sometimes your learners are in a different language. Like,
So true. Yeah,
how are
absolutely so
you?
true. So there are so many different communities that might not even know
Yeah.
that you exist.
And that's inclusivity, because you're including other people into what you do by facilitating the content into something that they understand,
So
you know?
that's we are talking about access through language. What else do you see that might be a challenge
Um,
when you're reaching out and building connection, I should say, with those communities?
so, for example, like our certification, which I work with again, um, it's broken into different phases, you know? Our educator certification has the 10-week online coursework, which what it does, it puts you in the shoe of a learner, learning the ISTE standards, learning how to integrate those standards into your practice, you know? Um, and you have a facilitator that's kind of like a teacher, like that. It's in that course with you. And it's interesting because you're in a group of learners from all over the world, you know?
Mm-hmm.
You have people who come from places where they only have one computer in the whole entire school. And you have someone in that group that
Mm-hmm.
is teaching in the United States where every student has a computer, in the classroom. And you face those challenges of those conversations of what equity looks like, um, because as you go through that, you're able to understand that we're not teaching people how to use a computer. We're telling them, how are you using a computer in your role as a teacher to guide learning, you know? And um, that's inclusion. Access is everyone having a computer. Inclusion is, how are you using a computer to learn, you know? And that's an interesting piece to that. And for like example, we were going back into the certification process. Like, once you go through this like 10-week coursework, you move into the portfolio stage, which is you curating independently your artifacts to the certification. Once you pass the certification, you meet the requirements you need to, you move into phase 3, which is kind of like, you're a certified teacher and you get membership for 3 years, and during those 3 years you're engaged with people. You become part of this Connect community, which is an online professional learning network of teachers, where I've had the privilege to join in conversations, and they are so rich. We call them educator meetups or instructional leader meetups, and what that does is, I've had the privilege of guiding some of them with the instructional leaders, and it's so interesting to hear how they are so drawn to what we do, because sometimes they feel like they're the lone wolf in their school,
That's
meaning
so
they're
often,
like the only person that's the technology specialists in their school, and they're looking to go ahead and engage and speak to other people, other individuals around the world that are in the similar role, and that's all they crave.
So I know that there are a lot of conversations about AI
Yeah.
in classroom. How does your organization is approaching this?
Okay, I will speak on it on a personal standpoint. um, AI isn't going anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, AI is here. AI is will be here tomorrow. AI will only get smarter
Right.
next year, you know? And ISTE, what it's doing, it's going like, it's embracing that change, you know?
So that you're talking, your organization is embracing it.
It's embracing it because why?
Absolutely,
We're
yes.
offering courses that are
Yeah.
designed for teachers and the use of AI, you
Mm-hmm.
know? We have AI Deep Dive for Educators, which is introducing the concept of AI to teachers, and then we
Yes.
offer levels of courses that are deeper than that, AI Deeper Dive, and what that does is teaching, instilling the understanding that you shouldn't fear
Yes.
change. It's, how are you adapting to the changing, world of technology, AI is the current trend. What's next?
Right.
And how are you going to adapt to that change? And that is one thing that ISTE+ASCD is so focused on, helping you understand that you shouldn't fear change in technology. It's, how are you adapting to the changes in technology so that you don't have that sense of like fear in what's next or things that are going to change. I think that, you know, in the education world 25 years ago, there was this big fear of the computer, you
Yeah.
know, and look what it did. Like, we carry it in our
That's,
pockets
yeah.
everywhere we go, you know. AI is that thing. Do we know what it's going to look like in 25 years? No, but it's about embracing it. It's about learning through it, and it's about manipulating it, because a computer can't manipulate us. You know, it's how are you manipulating the tool so that it produces what you want out of it.
And it's so important to guide the teachers to teach the students
Yeah,
on how to use it
yeah, yeah,
and how to use it productively, right?
yeah,
Point is that right now there are so many other
yeah.
tools and there are so many other AI solutions that we can integrate and let students know how to use it.
Yes, it's I think that that's, I mean, as a teacher, and I always think of everything that I do in that teacher
Hmm.
role, you know? If I were a teacher, how would I say this? If I were a teacher, how would I do this? If I were a teacher, how would I teach this? AI, like, is there for students to know,
Hmm.
for students to use, you know? But how do you teach them how to use it? Everyone can type an answer, but what is it that you're trying to get out of AI? For kids to do their work through AI, or for kids to research through AI? And I think that's the piece that I feel like people need to understand. Don't be afraid of a tool that's there. It's like a Google search engine, you know?
So your organization and with the certifications that you're preparing and integrating to the global community, when it comes to AI, is there anything in particular that you currently have?
Like offerings?
Yes,
Yes.
for AI in the classroom.
Yes. So my role, what I do is I have like leaders, teachers, people that come and say, we need professional development on AI, you know, and
Right.
my role is when they come and book a private, you know, booking with me to know and understand that, I listen to them. You know, I think the biggest, greatest strength you can ever do with anything you do, or anyone or business, is listen to the needs of people, you
Mm.
know? And what I ask them is, what is it that you need? Because I feel like there's people that, individuals who are afraid of AI, and they're just looking to gather and put anything out there to teach their teachers on the concept of AI, on the use of AI, of the educational, like, um purpose of AI, you know? And for example, like, I always tell them, like, look, these are our offerings. We offer courses, we offer certifications for you to go ahead and adapt your mindset around technology, i.e., AI. And we offer a lot of different positions around it, books, you know, like webinars, topics, open discussions, even during conference. That's a big thing that we like see the need for in our ever-changing education, you know, world. We offer our, specifically, you know, to the use of AI, a 50 an hour like facilitator course on AI deep dive, which is, how are you understanding AI? You know, you come in there and you understand how AI can be used in your classroom. You come in there and understand to not be afraid of AI. You know, I think that that's one thing that I hear a lot about educators. Like, I don't want them to do the work for me, or I don't want AI to do the work for students, you know? Um, and I think that one thing that I've learned through people that have gone through our courses and our course design and our certifications is, the greatest takeaway they have afterwards is, I learned to not be afraid of AI.
So this is still, from what I'm hearing, you're saying that trust is the biggest concern right now when it comes to AI.
Yes. I think trust is, um, I think it's been manipulated in a
Mm.
way, um, to have us fear AI. And I don't think that's fair, you know?
Interesting.
I don't think that's fair. I
Do you
don't,
think, do you see it, or maybe do you see the reasons why it's trust? And is it on the global level that you are seeing it, or it's mostly related to you? Because you're, again, going back to the global community, do you see any difference between US slash non-US or maybe some other regions around the world when you see that trust being just coming back to that trust issue?
Yeah. Um, Taking it away from the organization, just a personal standpoint,
Mm-hmm.
I think censorship is a big
Censorship.
piece.
Mm-hmm.
You know, um, when we were talking about access, the United States has access to so much. But I
Right.
think that we're currently in a position where um, we're questioning censorship a lot, and the use of AI.
Mm.
What's real, what's not, and
Right.
what's authentic and what's not, you know? Around the world, not everyone is as, advanced as we are when it comes down to technology. But the common problem is definitely trust, you know? I think that um, allowing AI to guide us is what needs to happen. AI doesn't know more than what we do, you know? But how are you the one responsible of guiding it? That's where that trust piece comes into it. Being able to trust our judgment to understand whether what we see, what we read, and what AI produces is right or wrong, you know? And and globally, I think that's doesn't language isn't
Mm-hmm.
going to change that. Um, we can agree to that right and wrong is right and wrong. There's no such thing as like, what AI is doing is correct and what AI is doing is incorrect. Um, yeah, yeah.
Interesting. And then, of course, once you go through the steps that you're going to build the connection with your communities, when do you really feel that okay, now I'm connected with the? You mentioned how you integrated Spanish and translations in order to reach out to the students that need your organization in a certain area.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure that you have done maybe something similar with other communities. So when you build those connections, in addition to translation, have you integrated other steps,
Yeah,
and what does it mean for your organization to have that, I would say, connection with the heart?
yeah. Um, I want to go ahead and say this. Within our like organization, we have this like running like joke. Where's Richard? He's our CEO because Richard travels all over the world. He visits schools that are using our products. He visits schools that are like, looking to bring in our work into what they do. And sometimes he like, during we have our a couple months ago we had our colo meeting, which is like
Mm-hmm.
within our organization, and he brought in students, and he's like showing like the students are showing how they're integrating what we do in their learning. And that was very interesting because I think that that's something that we all need to see our our work in action
Mm-hmm.
you know and and seeing like Richard when he travels be our face and who represents what we do is really impactful because he's able to go ahead and build those connections that people crave, those interpersonal connections, being able to be listened to by the person that's designing the things that we're using in our school, in our classroom, what our students are learning. And that is so important. That's so like special because that's exactly what we want to do, have people believe in us by trusting us, by like having that human authentic connection instead of just we're offering you something for you to use and then not caring whether you use it correctly or not. So him being present in those spaces, it's very important, and it's inspiring, because it makes you believe that like, you know, your work is your work is you know, I feel like it makes you believe that your work is of importance to the person that's the leadership of your organization, and it makes you feel like we're all working collaboratively from designer to learner to face to brand ambassador to make sure that what our work does is authentic to the needs of the educational world, you know?
That is so interesting. So in the end of the day, it's all about personal touch,
Yes.
and I'm going to say in this case, literally personal connection.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so your organization goes back before pandemic, and you guys were working on resolving this crisis of pandemic. What? How did it all started? How did it all start? How did you come with this idea that, well, this is the problem, technology is something that will need special assistance in education, and we are the ones who are going to be resolving it?
Yeah. So going back to that, what I said earlier about the ISTE standards, and the ever-changing need of technology, the computer was the integral piece to that. Like,
It all goes back
yeah,
to basics,
to basic
computer, and
computer.
now we are
Yeah,
at
we're
AI.
with AI,
Yes.
and what our company did is it's designing products and services to specifically cater to those needs.
Mm-hmm.
Through the pandemic, it was more on the aspect of community, the online community,
Mm-hmm.
that I think that was the greatest takeaway after the pandemic. Some schools didn't go back into the classroom for months, even after things were opening up. And even to this date, there's still people that prefer a virtual world. Like, I meet with leaders from all over the
Mm-hmm.
world that they say we're still in a hybrid setup where they only come to the school 1 day a week. The rest of the days are virtual. And what their need is, how we need help with that virtual structure. And with ISTE+ASCD, what we do with our work is, how can we assist you with that? How are we designing products, services that are specifically catering to those needs, whether that is like you being like guided on how to build online community, or whether that is how are you instilling, learning needs into like the tech standards essentially, or whether that is like, you learning a skill like AI and the integration of AI in your work. It's about assisting the learning needs in this world of learning that we live in. And I think that that's one thing that like ISTE does so well, which is listening to educators around the world and what their needs are, so that we can go ahead and assist them.
So now that I'm listening to you, if you can give us maybe 3 to 5 highlights on what it what would we need to create, or to be successful, to create online learning community, I should say. What are those ingredients for success?
Engagement is
Mm-hmm.
a big piece. I think engagement is the what draws you in to learn. Whether you're designing activities that are engaging for students, whether that is what their learning is of purpose or of meaning, that's going to go ahead and draw people in. The second is understanding that technology is a facilitator to learning. You don't have to teach to the computer to be able to learn. You can integrate videos, post them together, and that's your learning content. You know, students could go ahead and watch that on the go 5 hours later. They don't have to physically be in front of the screen to be able to get the ideas that you want to go ahead and learn. That is one of the things that I learned through the pandemic, changing the way you see learning. Learning doesn't have to be instantly, it could be put on pause and pick up later.
Mm-hmm.
That is one thing that I think I learned. And then the last piece is community. Those making sure that those instances and opportunities of interaction are meaningful. What is it you're gaining from that conversation with someone?
How do you see the community learning community online and in person combination of the future, provided all this integration of AI and different technologies that emerging today?
Yeah. the learning community in the age of AI. That's such an interesting question, just because, like I said, it's like you don't know what AI can do, because what AI could do today, 5 years ago, we were like, oh, never thought about it, you know? And I think that in the future, I hope people don't distance themselves from face to face communication and just solely rely on one individual for all their content. I hope it AI doesn't like have this. I mean, I hope people don't see AI as this assumption of, well, I don't need that interpersonal connection anymore, because I think that through those interpersonal connections you have the best conversations that you can't have with AI, you know? And maybe that is what happens. I think that as we get more familiar with the use of AI, we understand that, like, yes, it provides us answers, but it doesn't provide us like context that sometimes conversations can have, you know? For example, like you and I talking right now,
Right.
I'm not going to have that with AI, you know, because personal experiences you're not going to get from AI, you know, interpersonal connections you're not going to get from AI. And I think that um, people will be like, well, I don't have to go ahead and ask people anymore because AI has that. But AI doesn't have the life experiences that you might have. It doesn't have the questions that you do. You're asking AI questions. AI isn't giving you like that feedback in return. So like it's I think that's where like that aspect of community isn't really going to go away. I think it's going to be used in a sense of I'm there for interpersonal connections and looking for validation in that, and looking for AI as the fact checking like aspect of questioning, you know, and the inquisitive like nature of learning.
Interesting. Well, thank you, Brian.
Oh my gosh.
And let's see if there is one, I would say, actionable item that you would recommend to our listeners today to integrate in their maybe classrooms, maybe their learning routine, online, remote, for themselves, even for their families. Something that it could be quick start or improvement,
Mm-hmm.
in your opinion. What would that be?
Um, can you repeat the question again so that I'm able
So
to
let's
understand it?
say, one way or another, we are all living in a remote environment, whether it's communicating with our loved ones that live across the country, whether we have hybrid or full remote work today. We all have full or partial involvement in platforms such as Instagram,
Mm-hmm.
LinkedIn, whatever that um, community of your choice. Uh, we learn through those connections. And if there is someone who wants to build community or continue building community, integrate learning elements into it, you guys build a community of, I don't know, like 35, is it million or thousand followers? You have a very big community, global community, a lot. I think it is 100 something countries
Yeah.
that you guys are in. So if we want to learn from you, something that we can start tomorrow, one actionable item that you would recommend to us.
An actionable item or maybe actionable skill, active
Yes,
listening.
yes.
You know, listening to the needs of others. I think that is key. I think that's something that we do with our organization, of listening to the
Mhm.
needs of learners, listening to the needs of educators, you know, in our course design. Even when we design anything, we incorporate this feedback element, you know,
Mhm.
what's working, what worked for you, what didn't work for you, because we're ever changing to the needs of the learner, you know? I think that um, not one learner is the same, you know? Not everyone is the same.
Mhm.
And understanding that just because you learn something one way doesn't mean that everyone else will also learn the same way as well. And that's one thing that I've learned with the work that we do. Being able to understand that there's no specific profile of a learner, and you have to be able to listen to everyone to understand that needs are all wide and different from all, you know? And going back into that question, I think listening. Um, because when you listen, you act. When you
Okay.
listen, you change. When you listen, you decide to um, really deliver the needs of others and meet them where they're at when it comes down to like learning, essentially, you know?
Yeah, it is so important. Listen to connect,
Yeah,
listen to understand.
yeah. That is one thing. I think listen to understand. I think when I went to my education program, um, there was these activities called writing to learn. Listen to learn is a big
Yeah.
key that we need to go ahead and do and remind people to do in our work. Listen to learn. Listen to others to learn what to do to facilitate learning. You know?
Well, thank you very much for this
Thank you.
conversation, and I definitely learned a lot.
Thank you.
Where can we find more information about your certifications
So
and your
if you
organization?
yes, so if you go to ISTE+ASCD.org, you'll be able to go ahead and learn about all of the products and things that we do. We have our like tabs on, professional development, like publications with our magazines, with our books, our webinars, our events that we host, whether that's a webinar, whether that's like a conference, and you'll be able to go ahead and find that there with a lot of testimonials and a lot of knowledge. That's one thing that they love to go ahead and make sure that we put in our website, which is everything you might need, questions, you'll be able to go ahead and find it there.
Is there anything in particular that we should be excited this year? That's something coming up and then in the works?
Oh, there's so many things. If you don't know anything about, I mean, conference is my favorite time.
Okay.
It is. You get to meet with like, everyone that works in our organization. We're all like together. It takes a lot of work, but seeing the reception of like educators and when they come in and how excited they are, it all makes up for it. And, you know, with membership, you got a lot of different resources like publications with magazines and books that are released like monthly and quarterly, and that's a wealth of knowledge. Like, I love being able to even read our own products because you learn so much about what we're doing based on the current needs in the education world. Like EL Magazine, for example, loves to go ahead and publish articles related to the education world. AI is a big thing. Like, they have like publications specifically catered around AI, and that's really great for learners and readers to all over the world to be able to use that resource.
Well, thank you very much
Thank
for
you.
sharing, and thank you for joining Connected Conversations. If you do have time and if you are an educator or work in the field of education, join the conference. It's coming up. Is it in spring?
It's in Orlando.
Yes.
So if you like warm weather and you might need a vacation afterwards, Orlando would be a lot of fun.
Maybe you're going to see Bryan.
You
and
will see me
everyone.
if you go to Orlando because, I like to be around and walk around with a little tiny mic.
Well, again, thank you very much for joining us, and we appreciate all your commitment to Adastra community. We'll see you next time. Thank you. Thank you for tuning in into Connected Conversation. We are incredibly inspired by the potential of positive change within our communities. We invite you to be a part of our conversation, and we invite you to be a part of our journey. Please subscribe to our podcast to stay updated on our latest episodes. Your support is incredibly invaluable. It will help us to grow our community. We also encourage you to share your thoughts in the comments of each episode. Your feedback will help us to create even more meaningful conversations. We can inspire the change and connect with each other one conversation at a time.